Welcome back. This video is going to be Recovery and Faith, part 2. It's been a few weeks now, 2 weeks I think, since the last one. So I just wanted to pop on and finish the rest. Hopefully it's not as long as the other one. Yeah, so, hold on, Kitty. This is Nala. You guys met her, spinning, in the first video. Look at how big she is. Okay, so I wrote down a couple of notes and, gosh, cat hair. So the first one, so I talked about perspective in the last video, and my follow-up of the perspective is something that I have done is start a journal, actually 2 journals. And I think for any person, journaling is an amazing thing, and it's just a way to get your thoughts out of your head. But these journals I addressed differently. So I have one journal here, and then I have the other one. So we'll talk about this one first. So, and I've probably filled, I think I'm on my 4th journal doing it in this format, if you will. And basically it's just the same lined journal. And the only thing I've switched is addressing the journal, like every entry, as like, hey God or dear God, or not even that, but as I'm writing, have it like a conversation with God. Like if I'm writing about my day, incorporate that into it. And that has been really perspective and life-changing, because I find myself, like what we talked about in the last video was like me in the middle. It's helped me get out of the middle and see where my control is. And I found that I'm not as absorbed in whatever I'm writing. Like I can reflect and read back on those journals, and what would have taken, or what some crappy situations, what would have taken 3 or 4 or 5 pages out of my journal before only has maybe 1 page, because I'm giving it to God a lot faster and I'm not dwelling in it. And I think that is amazing, and it's teaching me to like come to Him with any problem. And I think if we're not coming to God with the small things, there's no way that we're going to come and trust Him with the big things. So that's one way that I've begun to really hand over the little things. Like if there's an argument, or if there's something that's said to me that didn't sit well with me, I put it in my journal. I talk to Him about it. And then I'm more easy, and it's more routine. It's not out of the ordinary, and it's not hard to go to Him with the big things. So yeah, so I filled probably 3, 4, or 5 journals within that format, and I actually kind of incorporate things that I've learned in treatment and that. So like I follow up with the date, a feeling, or like what I'm feeling, a joy of the day, and a challenge or a victory, and then I do praise and prayer and surrender. So it seems like a lot, and I don't touch on all of them all the time. It's kind of just like what I feel I need and hitting on those points. So there's days where I just skip. I mean, if it's a good day, I just skip like what was a challenge, or if I feel really in the pit, I just jump right into prayer or surrender or whatever it is. But that's kind of been a format that I've followed successfully. And I've had a lot of people ask me, like, how do you fill that many journals? How do you journal all the time? Like, gosh, I wish I could journal like you, or whatever that is. So that's just kind of what I do with my journal. It's not something special. I don't get like one of those $30 journals. I mean, they're probably all under $5. A lot of them I got from my church because they just have them. And then my second journal over here is called, my praise journal. And those, so in that I write things that I praise God about, like the little things. So I remember, like I started at the New Year, and I just remember writing, God, thank you so much for opening this opportunity, or God, you really came through for that person, like thank you, or wow, your faithfulness is so good, here's why. And that kind of, for me, it balances am I asking for prayer more than I'm asking, or acknowledging the goodness that He's already given me. Because I don't ever want it to be like I'm asking so much, but I'm not like sitting and being like, wow, look at all this stuff that you've already given me, and that you've already fulfilled the promises that you already, So that also is a perspective changer for me. So with both of those things, I think it has for sure gotten me out of the middle. Like, even when I'm talking right now, I haven't been talking about like, gosh, this was such a hard day. Because I do write really hard things in my journals, and they're nowhere near how defeating and how deep the hole in the pit used to be. Like, I could just keep going and going and going. And I think for any person, like, when you're on a downward spiral, it's so fast to go because you just get so much momentum. And this is kind of like and then it's like a stop and then revert, and then you can go and then revert, and then, so that's been something that I have done and will continue to do for probably indefinitely, unless a better system that I think of comes along. Speaking of the promises, I think also, let me look at my notes, another thing that I definitely say to myself, and I don't remember who told me this, but they said, like, I didn't come this far only to come this far. I did not come all this way to stop here and just keep wondering what was on the other side if I had kept going. And we hear about that in biblical times, like the Promised Land. We know that they were walking for so long and that they were so close to their Promised Land, and then even though the Promised Land wasn't actually a land, either way, like, they were so close to the promises that God had for them, and most of them stopped and turned around. And how sad is it to think that they were that close and they didn't think they could do it? And that's the same for us. Like, we are so close, and at any moment it could be our stepping into our promises that God has in store for us. So we don't get to stop. I mean, it's going to stink, it's going to suck, it's going to be hard, and we don't get to stop, because how much sadder would it be to look back, hindsight, and say, like, wow, I was seriously this close. So you did not come this far only to come this far. You must keep going, even if it's hard, even if it's the worst thing that you have to do in your life. It's going to be okay, and you will reach the Promised Land, because His promises are good, and He cannot lie. Like, that is a truth. Like, there's a Bible verse that says the never changing things about God. Like, He cannot lie. He cannot, I don't remember the rest, but that's the truth. And with that, like, what you're gaining in your process is going to turn into your testimony. And that testimony can be used to reach other people for Christ. I had somebody speak over to me very young that, hey, this is going to turn into your testimony. And not only is it helping you, it's helping me because I'm supporting you. And when I see somebody else going through that, I can better help them. So without you even knowing it, and with you just being you and existing in your struggle, you are helping generations. And that is amazing. And after that, and when you're on that triumph, like, you get to speak to your challenges, you get to speak to the really hard, defeating moments, and you get to put hope on it. Like, you get to tell them, like, hey, this is what I learned in the process, kind of what I'm doing, and I'm not even all the way up there, you know? So there is hope with that. And with that, while you're in the pits, and while you're in the defeat and whatever it is, whether it's eating disorder, anxiety, all the other things that we've talked about in the last video too, finding people that are in your corner is so pivotal. And if you don't, pivotal? And if you don't feel like you have that, you need to find ways and resources to gain that, whether it's a support group, whether it's online resources, whether it's a friend of a friend of a friend. People that you can gather into your corner is going to be so essential. Grace extenders, people that are going to lift you up on the high moments and sit with you when you're in the depths, but still instill hope that you can get up. Because we don't need the friends that are going to just sit in the misery with you and be like, oh, well, this is a fun, comfortable place, let's just stay here. That's not going to produce growth. So finding those people that are going to uplift you both in the triumph and celebrate you there, and uplift you in the bottom, saying like, hey, let's get up, let's keep walking. And it's really hard. I'm going to acknowledge that. It's really hard when you feel you don't have that support, or you feel very alone in your struggle. And again, I mean, we know cognitively we cannot be the only ones, because we know that Jesus suffered all of this and more while he was here. Yet it's a very human emotion to feel alone in your struggle. So finding those people is so essential, and it's just so essential, and it gives hope for the next day. It gives hope, like, hey, this person believes in me, or like, hey, I'm gonna keep going because I know that they're fighting for me too, or whatever it is. And pretty soon you're gonna feel that strength on your own, that it won't matter if you have somebody by your side 24/7, or it won't matter if people don't check in with you for a period of time, because you know you can do it with yourself and with God's strength too. But having those people in your corner, finding those people is so essential. And I just really want to quick validate that with that alone, isolated feeling, even if people don't know that you're struggling, even if coming out like with your struggle is such a scary thought to you, maybe that's why you don't feel you have support. Maybe it's because you haven't been able to find a way to tell people about what's going on, whether that's any of the number things that we've talked about. You're valid. Whatever you're going through is valid. It doesn't matter if you're at the extreme or if it's just a little hint of something. You are valid. Your struggle is valid because you are struggling. There's no other context about it. You don't need to reach a requirement of like, you're not really struggling until you reach here. That's not it. You're valid at any single point, and I see you at every single point. So getting support at every single point is so important. And if you're still thinking of a way to tell people and to reach out for help, one of the ways that I did it when I told my mom, I was so perpetually scared. I was so terrified. And I remember talking with my therapist, and she kind of gave me an ultimatum. She was like, you're going to go to the hospital, I'm going to send you there right now, or you're going to make this intake appointment and you're going to do it that way. And I was livid. So I knew I had to tell my mom either way, and there was a very small timeline of when I needed to do it. And so I personally hate confrontation of any sort, even if it's like me reaching out for help. So what I did was write a super long note and telling her all the things that I needed to say, whatever I felt like I needed to say. I can't even remember what I said in it, but I laid it on the kitchen table before, because she left before, and then I went on the bus for school. And at the bottom I said, do not text me, do not call me about this, please write a response. And then I left, and then I had swimming and diving afterwards, so I knew I wouldn't be home till later. And for me, that felt safer because it wasn't the immediacy that is in a conversation. So like when you're talking to somebody and you say something and they right away have a response, whether or not they think about it, it may be attacking, it may be, they just don't have time to process and think of a response that would better meet you where you're at. So for me, it felt safe for her to read this note and have that space to think about it and then write a response rather than just like spitfiring anything that came to mind. I do remember in the note that I said, it's okay if you're against this, but I have no choice. I'm going to get help. I already have an appointment. I don't need a ride. I don't need, it's on this day. You know, I have everything planned out. I just needed to tell you, or something like that. So that was the way that I did it. So writing a note or talking to somebody or even pulling in a mentor or a third person party to see if they can sit in with you and like help ease the tension or whatever you feel is comfortable and safe enough for you to do, to reach out for support, do it, because it's so hard to do it alone. It just is. Oh, so there is a Bible verse and I can't remember what it is. I think it's in 1 Corinthians, and it goes, the food is for the stomach and the stomach is for food, and God will do away with both. And I absolutely love that verse. That's probably one of my favorite eating disorder verses, because I just love how simple it is. The food is for the stomach and the stomach is for the food, and God will do away with both. That's it. It's not saying, oh, but if it's good food, or oh, but if it's under this many calories, or if I run this much, or if I burn it off this way. It's just concrete. This is what's going to happen. God will do away with both. It's going to be okay. And I think that's one of the things that especially Western culture gets tripped up on, is the celebration, the simplicity of what food should be. Because no matter what, like, so my grandma, just this cute old woman, and I just love her dearly. I remember when I was in the pits of my eating disorder, she would cry when I would eat, or she would be so excited when I would eat and just say, God really blessed you today. Wow. And I was like, gosh, okay, here you go again. But now that I'm more farther along than that, I can see like, wow, just how sweet that message was, because she just believes that every single time, and she's completely right, every single time we're able to have food in our bellies, like, it is a blessing from God. Any amount, whether in abundance or a little bit of lack, and not, everything is a blessing from God. And to see it that way, and to not see it as scary numbers, or to see it as frightening trans fats or carbs, or whatever it is, and however you want to break it down, like, break it down to a blessing. Like, that's it, like, why are we complicating things? Like, why are we overcomplicating things and bringing it down to human conditions and expectations and parameters on what it should be? That's just not okay. It's a celebration. It always, in biblical times, it always was, and it should be, and in other parts of the world, it is celebrated. But for Western culture, it's so hard for us, because we just, diet culture, everything is about, like, dehumanizing food, or not dehumanizing, but it's just negative. And we got to figure out how to return to the roots. We got to, in other countries, you sit down for 3-4 hours and it is completely normal. Nowadays in Western culture, it is miserable to sit for 30 minutes. We almost can't handle it. And gosh forbid if we get off our phone for that time and actually talk to each other. It's just so uncomfortable, because we're not trained in that way. Like, we are trained up into assuming this thing about food, and then we see so many advertisements and messages flooding our kids and flooding our minds about food, and then we leave with all of these negative messages about it, when really so many verses in the Bible say that it's a celebration, that it's a simple thing, you are fed, it's a blessing, God's going to do away with the rest. We don't need to overcomplicate things. So that's something I am super passionate about, and trying to return to the celebration, trying to return. And I think I've incorporated that a little bit of, even if I'm super, super anxious and just can't even fathom going out with friends and having dinner or whatever, turning that language around and that script, like we talked about in the last video. Like, how awesome is it that I was able to go out and celebrate with friends? And even if there's no reason to celebrate, or no reason that we were going out, just we all wanted to go out, like, how awesome is it that I could celebrate that, because I'm farther along than when I would have said no and just stayed at home and just dwelled in my mind. Like, that's a celebration itself. Having food and being able to buy and drop a 20 on dinner calls for a celebration, because many, many, many countries could not do that. So seeking opportunities of, like, this is such a celebration. Any family meal is a celebration. What is something that you can talk about? What is something that you can learn and find and discover about something or somebody around your table that you never knew before? So seriously, turning around that script and finding cause for celebration, or looking at it in a different lens as a blessing and a celebration. And I think, we're moving in the right direction as Western society. There's a lot of movements of, body positivity, and opening the conversation more is going to enable us to further that along. But it's just so sad to see how far Western culture has become, or it has taken it. And without us doing, anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that. But that is something that you can do, and that you can do actively right now, saying, hey, I know that I'm going to be super annoyed with myself later, or I'm going to hate myself later, or I just don't want to really do this. But changing it around and being like, wow, at least I was able to celebrate, because a few months ago, I wouldn't even have thought of saying yes. So how amazing. And thank you, God, for supplying me with this money to buy this food, these farmers to grow this food, these cooks to, like, prepare the food, and the waitress and the food on my plate, these friends to gather with me. All of these things is such a blessing. Thank you, Lord. And just leaving it at that. And He will do away with the rest. And honestly, the whole kingdom mindset thing is true, because we don't get our bodies when we die. And that, like, let that be a freeing feeling. Let that be a freeing thought, because we have so much anger and hatred and disgust with our bodies. And honestly, like, this is just the vessel we're trusted with right now. And it really won't matter when we're gone. So why are we letting it matter now? It's just a glimpse in time. So, like, that's been something that I've used recently that's helped me of, and even if it's just, you have to convince yourself. So right now I'm in the period where I'm just going to convince myself it doesn't matter, even if I don't believe it. And sooner, or over time, it's going to change those neural pathways to where I will believe it. Because, it's not. It's just going to be, and just let that be a freeing thought. Anyway, dun dun dun. Okay, the last one I had, which I think, so yeah, this is like the last thought, which is kind of cool because this has been a long train of videos, so hooray for you for sticking with it. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the expectation of timeline. And what I mean by that is expecting that we're going to be healed by a certain date, or that we should be over this in a certain amount of time. So for eating disorders, it's predicted, and I don't know who came up with this, that within 7 years, you'll struggle for 7 years and then you can reach recovery, or whatever it is. Or the common time for reaching recovery is 7 years. And I remember hearing that when I was first diagnosed, of like, oh my gosh, like 18, like counting, you know, when is that going to be? And that's only for eating disorders. So if you have pre-existing and coexisting conditions and disorders, like, man, when is that going to happen? And somebody told me that, I just feel like I say somebody told me so many times. I have a lot of people speaking truth into me, I guess. Anyway, I had somebody tell me that there's no expectation and there's no timeline for healing. And I used to get very frustrated with that because I was like, no, like 380, you know, like, no, I need it by this date, whatever it is. But we don't get that promise. We don't get that promise of like, in 384 days, you're going to be healed. And in 396 days, that person's going to be healed. And 1,300 and whatever days, that person's going to be healed. We don't get that promise. We don't get that assurance of, hey, this is when. But we do get the assurance that it will happen. But we don't get the insight or the magnifying glass to say when. And that, I mean, so like I said, I used to get very frustrated with it because I wanted to know. I wanted to see, like, okay, so how do I push it along? If it's 384 days, how can I cut that in half? What do I have to do? And what if it's not? Like, what if I reach 384 days and I don't feel healed enough? Like, do I start over? You know, whatever it is. But we get to hold on to the promise that, like, God does promise true and abundant healing. There's so many verses about healing in the Bible, and like, we know already that his promises are true, and we already know that he's going to fulfill those. So resting in that it's a promise that he's going to fulfill. We are going to reach healing. We just don't get to say when. And letting that be okay for right now. So letting that be, hey, just for today, I don't have to know what tomorrow holds. And just for today, I don't have to know when this is all going to end. Just for today, I'm going to look at today, conquer today, and trust whatever it is next. And just for today, I'm going to believe that at the end, whenever that is, whatever date, whatever year, whatever millennium that is, there's going to be healing. And I don't have to know. And that doesn't have to be a defeating thought. That doesn't have to be, oh gosh, when is this coming? It can be, wow, no matter how much I struggle right now, no matter how much I think it's never going to come, I know that it's going to come. I know that there's true healing. And when there's true healing, we need to remember that we can't go back to the cross and pick up what he's already healed. We can't reverse the healing he's already secured. And that's going to be something that you're going to have to navigate as you reach that point. You can't go back and tinker with the things that he's already healed. You can't go back and dip into that. Like, when you're healed, you need to solidify it. You need to, live your life, because that's what we're striving to do anyways, you know? So I'm going to post a blog about all of the verses that I have found in the Bible, and I've created just like a Google Docs to see if that, I'm sure some of them will resonate with you. And yeah, I'm going to kind of wrap this up. So from the first, if you haven't checked out the first video, you can go to my page, subscribe at the bottom, but check out the first part of Faith in Recovery, and then this one. And again, for those who are just watching this video, this journey of incorporating my faith into recovery is new. It's been probably, I think I'm coming up on a year of doing it, and through it I've learned so many amazing things, and I know that as I continue doing it, I'm going to learn even more. So I hope to continue making videos. Maybe if this is helpful for people, I'll continue making videos. If it's not, I don't know, stick to other stuff. But I do think it's valuable to figure out every day of your life how to incorporate God and how to incorporate your faith, and how much cooler is it to find like the defeat moments and rise up from that with your faith. So that's kind of why I wanted to share that with you guys, because if you yourself have been having a struggle and whatever, figuring out what's another avenue that I could try, what's another way that I could give it a go. Yeah, so I hope these weren't too miserable for you to watch. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that online, but I don't know. I hope you guys have the rest of your amazing day and continue, yeah. Okay.